Our club has always been a forum for public figures, thought leaders, and decision makers to share their ideas. Here, we offer access to dynamic political, business, and public personalities.
We are dedicated to encouraging debate on the issues that matter to this city, this province, and this country.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Good afternoon, friends, members, and guests. My name is David Simmons. I'm president of the Canadian Club Toronto and your host for today's event. We are live in the room and online, and we welcome our guests. Despite the pandemic, we've been able to adapt, offering an impressive roster of speakers for our 125th season. Our level of engagement with members and guests has increased significantly because of our online presence. Hundreds of guests have just joined us virtually. We welcome you, and we appreciate you spending your time with us today. As you watch today's event, please engage with us on social media. For those of you in the room, there are hashtags on your table, and for those of you online, there are currently hashtags on your screen. Ready for Better is the NDP's vision for delivering real results for Canadians. The party's commitments span 7 policy areas with the overall theme of making life better, more accessible and affordable for all Canadians. The federal leader will be sharing his vision with us very shortly. If you have questions for the leader, please note them on the Q&A cards on your table. My colleagues will be wandering the room to pick them up. And if you're online, now's your chance to click Submit a Question. They'll be fed into our staff, and they will float them to me after his remarks. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge our event sponsors for today, Bruce Power, and represented by Pat Dalzell. We appreciate your generous support. And I'd also like to thank my old friend Simon Dwyer from Bell, Canada, for his support of the Youth and Young Leaders table today. And we have guests joining us from the Ryerson Leadership Lab. Hello, Ryerson Leadership Lab. Jagmeet Singh grew up in Scarborough, St. John's, and Windsor. In university, he studied law and developed a reputation as an outspoken activist. He fought against poverty, tuition fee increases, and advocated for equal access to justice for marginalized communities. The lawyer and human rights activist became a provincial politician in 2011. During his 6 years as an NDP MPP, he served as deputy leader. On October 1st, 2017, he became leader of Canada's NDP. Whether at university, in the community, at Queen's Park, or on Parliament Hill, he's always focused on a more just Canada for all of us. Recently, the NDP caucus delivered the greatest expansion of universal health care in generations, with the creation of a new dental care program and concrete steps towards national pharmacare. Mr. Singh is driven to make sure government delivers for people with stronger services that help create a better future for everyone. We saw signs of that in the recent federal budget. Mr. Singh, I'm pleased to pass the Canadian Club Toronto podium over to you.
And Mr. President, for the record, it was me that started the cheer for you, so hopefully, in case that wasn't clear. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank the Canadian Club for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you, and of course, President David. And before I go any further, I also want to acknowledge the traditional territories that we're gathered on. the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, and now a territory that is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And I also want to talk a bit about why it's so important for us to acknowledge the territories. One, it's to recognize the first people of this country. But most importantly, I think, it's to recognize our shared responsibility to work towards remedying the injustice that the first people of this country have faced. I know you've all got busy schedules, so I want to acknowledge that this is a room with many influential and folks that share power, and I want to thank you for being here. I, as the president alluded to, look forward to and I hope to share my vision of a just Canada and share that vision of a better Canada through the reflection of the struggles that people are currently facing and how New Democrats used our power in this minority government to bring real supports and help to people that are facing these struggles. Je veux remercier l'organisation, les organisateurs, les bénévoles pour l'occasion, l'opportunité de parler avec vous, de partager mes pensées, mes idées. Et je voudrais partager ma vision pour un Canada plus juste, plus équitable. Et merci pour votre présence. I will also proudly follow the New Democratic tradition of speaking truth to power. As I've stated, this room is filled with many people who have power and influence, and at the risk of plagiarizing Spider-Man motion pictures, with great power comes great responsibility. So brace yourself. I have some concerns, and I will be sharing them. I also want you to know and share with you the principles that my decisions are based on. They're a lesson that I learned in early childhood, a lesson that guides me to this day. And it is the following, that we are all intrinsically and inherently connected. When people around us are suffering harm, I truly believe it harms all of us. And conversely, when we lift the people around us, when we support them, when we help them, we're all benefiting from that support. And that is why I fundamentally believe that those who have the means, those who have made tremendous profits in these difficult times when people were struggling to keep the lights on, have a responsibility to contribute their fair share to support those who've struggled. This has been a really difficult couple of years for Canadians. We know that the pandemic has had a tremendous toll on Canadians. A toll in loss of life, loss of loved ones, a toll on stress and worry and anxiety, and a devastating financial impact on so many Canadians. On top of that, we see the cost of living rising. The cost of everything is going up, from filling up your car, putting food on the table, groceries, to the fundamental question of having a place to call your own. The cost of housing has gone up dramatically. As inflation has gone up and salaries haven't kept pace, it's been an effective pay cut for millions of Canadians, and it only makes it harder for those Canadians to make ends meet. On top of all of that, we've got a war in Ukraine with horrific atrocities and human rights violations that make us all feel less safe and secure in the world, with the real fear of devastating global impacts. As a result of all this, people are really anxious and they're worried. But they're also frustrated and angry. And I want to talk about that anger and that frustration. Frustrated that while they've been struggling, those at the very top have only increased their wealth and power. And Canadians are right to be angry. Angry that a rigged system is designed in such a way where while they are struggling, the ultra-rich continue to get richer. They feel that the system is rigged against them, and that results in more anger. They want politicians and leaders like those in this room to come together to solve the problems they're facing, to face the immense challenges people are dealing with. And I want to be very clear, people can't do that on their own. We've tried that. Governments have told people time and time again, you're on your own. You're on your own to find another job to make ends meet when your hours are slashed in half. Governments have told people they're on their own to take care of their teeth when they need urgent care. And all that is done has just fueled the anger and the frustration that Canadians feel. Workers have seen big companies, some of those companies that are here today, laying off workers, outsourcing jobs, and at the same time giving massive bonuses to their CEOs. They've seen some of the companies in this room get COVID support from the federal government, which is meant to help workers, meant to keep workers employed, and instead, that money has gone to increasing shareholder dividends, and wrongly so. If left on their own in the face of this crisis, this struggle, this mounting frustration and anger, Liberals have shown either they're too slow to act to the urgency of the times, or they're not willing to act at all. And in the worst crisis in a generation, we've seen the official opposition of Canada more focused on their own problems and their own party than on what matters most to Canadians. This year, we've heard a lot about the divisions in our country, the divisions amongst Canadians. And frankly, that division has been fed by both Liberals and Conservatives. And Canadians have clearly told us to stop, to get to work, to solving the problems people are faced with. We have to change the system that's made people angry because they're being left behind. A system where their governments will not stop the merger of Shaw and Rogers, which we know will only lead to a bigger monopoly, laying off, a massive layoff of workers, and ultimately higher costs for the essential services that Canadians need. This will only be good for those at the top, and it will hurt people. A system where the same week a crucial climate change crisis report was tabled, the government approved a massive expansion of oil and gas and approved an approach of massive tax breaks for oil and gas companies. People have seen time and time again that the federal government is willing to move mountains for the very few wealthiest and does the bare minimum for Canadians who need help the most. They're tired of that approach, and they're angry. They have every right to be. Now more than ever, Canadians need results and stability. They need politicians and leaders to do more for them, to show up for them, to help them. In the past, New Democrats have used our power in minority governments to deliver significant help to people in need, like Medicare and more affordable housing. And we are carrying on this fight. C'est pourquoi, dans ce gouvernement minoritaire, on a utilisé notre pouvoir pour réaliser des victoires pour les gens, des grands avancements pour aider les gens dans ce temps difficile. And that's why, as New Democrats, we used our power in this minority government to deliver real help to people in difficult times, to help them out when they need it most. And so we're really proud to announce, as was alluded to, and I'm sure you've seen, that we have secured the biggest expansion of our healthcare system in a generation with a dental care program, starting with children under 12 this year and expanding to every family that needs help that earns less than $90,000. This will help 6.5 million Canadians at a minimum. This is significant. For families, this means at least $1,200 of saving per year for families that have not been able to get care or barely scrape by and are able to get the care that they need. We're also really proud to announce that our deal will mean a significant and concrete step forward towards universal medication coverage for all by ensuring that by next year, a Canada Pharmacare Act will be tabled in legislation, a legislation that sets up the framework for universal pharmacare, which is something we've heard again and again is vital. We're the only country in the world with a Medicare system, a healthcare system, that doesn't include medication. And one of the biggest struggles of modern time right now for Canadians, one of their biggest struggles is being able to find a home they can afford. And we're also proud that we were able to secure 3 concrete steps to make it easier for people to find a home that they can call their own. The first major, I would call it a game changer, is changing the definition of what is affordable. It's been a major question. When we talk about affordable housing, well, what is affordable? Under the previous definition, just to give a concrete example here in Toronto, the Liberals' definition of what was affordable meant a project would receive federal funding if 20% of the units were affordable, and the affordable definition was for a one-bedroom apartment in Toronto, $2,229. With the new definition, we would reduce that basically by half to $1,256. In other communities across the country, I was recently in Montreal, the definition meant about $2,200, and it would be dropped to $730. So a significant reduction in what's truly affordable. Of course, we would do more, but this is a concrete step to make life more affordable. Thanks. We were able to secure a significant increase in the investment towards affordable housing, forcing the government to deliver more money more quickly. And finally, immediate help for some of the most precarious Canadians, those who are dealing with the increase in housing costs and rent. We are going to include, or what's been included already through our agreement, is a one-time top-up of $500 with the potential to continue for 1.2 million Canadians who need help the most for the Canadian housing benefit. That's an immediate support that will start getting out to families this year. I appreciate some of my supporters in the crowd there. It's keeping me hyped up. We also, importantly, for the future, secured some really meaningful action on fighting the climate crisis and securing good jobs for Canadians. We've pushed hard to force the government to eliminate some of the fossil fuel subsidies. By the end of this year, we'll see some action on that. In addition, we know that the climate crisis cannot be fought unless workers are kept at the heart of this question of how we move forward in a way where we protect our environment, but we ensure that workers have good jobs. So in that spirit, we've secured commitments and investments for creating a clean jobs transition, which would support redeployment, retention, and retraining for workers, as well as a commitment to move forward with just transition legislation, which is to ensure that workers are kept at the heart and the center of any work that we do towards fighting the climate crisis. But we know we need to do more, and I want to be really clear about this. This is not a New Democrat government or a New Democrat budget, as much as I like seeing the headline on the National Post. This is clearly a Liberal government, and a Liberal government that's a minority government in which New Democrats use our power to get more help for people. And we're proud of that. But we know there's a lot more to do, and we're going to continue to fight hard to make sure that the ultra-rich pay their fair share, that there's more action to fight the climate crisis, that there's more justice for Indigenous people, and more investments in our healthcare system, a healthcare system we want to proudly keep public and universal, where it doesn't matter how much you earn or how much money you have in determining the care that you get. So this agreement is about making sure Canadians are being seen by the people they sent to Ottawa. It's about respecting the decisions that Canadians made and using our power in this context to get people the help they need. Not just talking about their struggles, but actually committing to real action, concrete steps to fixing the problems that people are faced with. That's exactly what we were elected to do. And the story of this difficult time that I alluded to initially, the struggles that people are going through, what we've seen in this time is not a story of division or selfishness. It's been a story of people coming together to help each other out. I'm sure you've heard of stories and you've experienced moments throughout the pandemic where people have stepped up, where communities and workers and families, business leaders have come together to help people out. The spirit of taking care of your neighbor and taking care of one another. Again, I would say it's based on this belief that we are connected and we are stronger when we take care of one another. We have to build on that momentum. As we come out of this pandemic, we need to build on this principle of taking care of one another. In order to build a brighter future, one that includes everyone, one that's more affordable, more equal, more hopeful and secure, we need to build on that desire to care for one another. And that's why we want to do more for people, to get real help for Canadians and their families, so they can feel more secure in these uncertain times. But if greed is the only motivating factor for the decisions we make, we won't get anywhere. But if we commit to working together for the betterment of all, we all benefit, but we will certainly be able to make the changes that we need to see happen. And yes, it will mean that the super wealthy will have to contribute more fairly towards building the society. I used to make fun, but I used to be confused when people would talk so much about their children. And as a new dad now, I'm doing the exact same thing. And I want to share with you just a little story about the deal, a little behind the scenes story. We were working hard to secure an agreement right after the election. We saw it was another minority government. We wanted to get help for people. We wanted to use our power to make that happen. We had some talks and didn't pan out. And when Anhad gets older, my daughter gets older, I'm looking forward to telling her the story that it was actually her birth that's resulted in a call from the Prime Minister that actually got this deal back on the table and got our conversation going. So we named our daughter Anhad, and her name means limitless. And we hoped every time she said her name, every time she heard her name, she would really believe that she's limitless. And we know that for young women, it's particularly a challenge. And so the vision behind this deal was how do we make sure people can live a limitless life? They're not limited by fear of the environment. They're not limited by not being able to get their teeth fixed or be able to get the healthcare that they need. That people should be able to live limitlessly, because that's what I want for my daughter. I'm sure that's what you want for your children. And in fact, I think it's what we should want for all children. And so we look at this deal as something, when she gets older, I want to tell her that she was a big part of making it happen. A deal that we call internally the Anhad Accord, the Limitless Accord, in a direction of making sure people get the care that they need. So I believe, and I hope that you all agree with me, that should be our goal. Our goal should be about building a future where our children, where all children can live their lives in a limitless way. And with that goal, I want you to know that is what we are committed to doing. New Democrats will always use our power to get help for people, to support people, to build that brighter future. And I ask you that you walk this path with me and with us together. We share this goal. We will come up with some incredible solutions. We will make a huge difference, and we will truly realize a better Canada, a Canada that's more fair, that's more just, a Canada where we can be confident that we've done everything we can to build that limitless future for our children and for generations to come. Thank you.
Test. I learned my lesson the hard way, and I always turn my mic off when I sit down. So I just turned it back on.
I was quite nervous about that myself.
I know. I was like, what do you mean? They're like, it's live. I'm like, that's not smart. But here we are. Leader, thank you for your comments, your remarks. You fired up the room in the best way possible at the Royal York. You know, it's a little formal, but,
yes.
But I think the room was fired up. Let's give it up for the leader.
Hey.
Fired him up.
How are you finding a comfortable position here? You look really elegant. I'm trying to copy it,
thanks.
but I can't.
You know, I mean,
no, it feels like I'm.
Me and Jagmeet are both from Scarborough. We also both lived in Brampton.
We didn't coordinate that.
No, we didn't. And we also are both brown. So yay. It's great. Leader, in your speech, I listened with intention, and I noticed you talked about Canadians being angry. And you have the privilege to travel across the country, to meet families, to talk to them about what they're going through. And oftentimes in progressive politics, hope is the North Star. Talk to me how you reconcile traditional concepts of hopefulness and what you're hearing as anger among Canadians.
Yeah, that's something I've thought a lot about. And I think that the left cedes the ground to anger and emphasizes hope. And I think what we need to do is acknowledge the anger, not ignore it, and understand what are the roots of that anger. Where does that come from? And ultimately, it comes from people feeling that things are unfair, that things don't feel right. And then we can respond to that feeling of injustice. The original, as a kid, what you'd say when things don't feel right, that's not fair, that's not fair. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's something that stays with us. That is a fundamental question. We want fairness in our lives. And if we ignore that anger and that frustration, we miss out on responding to people where they're at. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that anger and not to cede the ground to the right who taps into that anger and provides solutions that aren't really going to fix the problem. And so I really believe that our path to connecting to people is to acknowledge where they're at, and that's anger and frustration, and then provide solutions that give people hope.
And do you think that people are more hopeful today than they were before Minister Freeland tabled a budget?
I think that this agreement has given people hope. And I've seen that because when we campaigned and spoke about the things that we wanted to do, people were interested in a lot of the options. But I think what hit people in a really visceral way was the idea of dental care, because it's really a class example in the sense you could look at someone and in their smile and their teeth see the class, where if someone had resources and had the opportunity and benefits, they get their teeth fixed, and those that don't, you can see it in their teeth. And it's such a question of dignity and respect, and it's something that everyone wants to be able to do but can't. And so with this agreement, what we've been able to achieve is really going to make sure every single Canadian who can't get access to help and can't afford to do it on their own will get help. And that to me is a step in the direction of giving people hope. The steps on affordable housing, the steps on making sure we respond to the needs of people, I think will give people more hope. And it's starting to.
I remember when news started to leak about the Limitless Accord. Let me use that.
Actually, I've never said that out loud like that. It sounds really cool too.
It's great, right? I thought, I hearkened back to President Biden saying to President Obama, "This is a big effing deal," and I said that to a friend. I texted him like, "This is a big effing deal." So talk to me a little bit about what that's like to know that the party, the team, the caucus was a part of moving an agenda that's really important to you, obviously. First, I just want to acknowledge it is big. Whatever you think about the result, it's big. How does that feel? What's that? Give us feel. What does it look like?
Well, I hesitate to talk about how I feel about something that's something so good for people, and I want to think about what it means for people. But I will break that rule for just a little bit, and think for some reason every time I talk about it, I think about my daughter at 12 because it's 12 and under. And so I imagine her at 12, just the way my mind works. And I think about what if she couldn't get her teeth fixed and she really needed to. And I think about the stories I've heard of people with really painful problems in their teeth and go to the hospital and they can't actually get the care. They get painkillers because it's not covered. So I think about her. And then I think about, there's one story that really hits me and why I feel like this is such a big moment. And so I agree it's a big deal. I think about Adam. He's a new dad, so maybe I related because he's a new dad. I chatted with him on the phone. And he was from Alberta, and he talked about, he was very frank with me, said, I'm earning about $65,000 to $70,000 a year. I've got 2 kids, and they're both under 12. They still had their baby teeth, I remember the part of the story, and that they had some serious problems. And he felt like he cared about his kids, he loved his kids, and he thought, I can't afford to take care of their teeth. It's gonna cost about $1,000 each. We're barely getting by on our budget. And he kind of broke down a bit and started to feel a bit of shame and saying, like, am I a bad dad? Because I'm thinking maybe their adult teeth will come in and the problem will be okay. And I wanted him to know, like, no, it's not like your problem, your fault for thinking that way. It's reality. And I thought what this would mean to him. And I got to do a follow-up call with him. And what he said is, like, the weight that's lifted from his shoulders, the shame that he no longer has to feel, because he knows once this happens, he'll be able to get his kids the care they need. And so I think about him a lot.
Wow. Well, let's think about Adam and the need to do better for Canadians. That's a really powerful reminder. A lot of what you outline in your remarks today are what academics, and this isn't diminutive to academics, I love them, would call sort of wicked problems. There are a lot of what communicators, and I love communicators too, not diminutive, would call a demand or call.
I looked at the same communicator when you said that, I think.
Hey, Monk. Hey, Ann. What we would call meeting the moment, right? So the last, I think, 3 years, I think there's been a call around the world, we have to meet this moment, particularly around the pandemic. And in meeting the moment, it demands a whole of society approach. You hear that from the Biden White House, you hear that from the Trudeau government, that we need a whole of government approach, a whole of society approach. How do you answer that whole of call when the reality for many people, may not be your perspective, but many other perspectives, is that goods can be in conflict, right? So fair paying jobs for everyone can be in conflict with this issue over here, or climate as an issue. We're hearing that from around the market, that our move to carbon neutrality or to a less carbon environment has a material impact to certain parts of the country. How do you solve for that with this very intense need to address wicked problems in society?
Yeah, that is one of the biggest questions I think that we're faced with. I think going back to the principle of fairness, that can be a really guiding principle. When it comes to one of the biggest resources we have to solve problems, is making sure we've got enough financial resources to do these things. And when we look at that, who should pay for the cost of the pandemic? Who should pay to build a better society coming out of it? And I think what would be fair? Would it be fair to Adam, who's barely getting by and couldn't afford to get his children's teeth fixed? Would we ask Adam to contribute more? Or would we ask a company like Amazon that makes record profits in the pandemic, as people couldn't go to stores and they had to shop online, and they post these record profits when they still don't effectively pay much or any taxes in Canada? I would say it should be Amazon that contributes a fair share. And will Amazon like that? Maybe not. But is it the fair thing to do? Absolutely. And so I think fairness can be a really guiding principle. I think the idea about what can we do to build that brighter future for our kids, for the next generation, can also guide us in decisions. And in that, we have to make decisions that ensure that we have a future for our kids and for the next generation. So I think those two can be guiding principles. I'm a bit of an optimist, as it maybe comes across, and I always want to find solutions where everyone can win, when it's a win for everybody. But if there has to be a choice, I would lean on fairness, and I would lean on what are we doing for the future generation, and that's how we should think. I always think about the indigenous kind of principles around, the tree that grows and the shade is not something that we experience, but it's going to be our future kids that experience that kind of idea, or that we take care of the land not for this current generation, but for many generations in the future. And I think that should be our guiding principle.
Wonderful. For those of you in the audience, there are Q&A cards on your table. You can submit questions. There are colleagues floating in the room, and if you're online, click submit a question, and we will try to get to them. There's a question here for you. Is sharp-edged?
Oh, is it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's set up either for a truly sharp edge or really funny question.
No, this one is a policy question.
Okay.
No, okay. We've seen some of Canada's premiers question whether the federal government should run a dental care program, saying it should be delivered by the provinces. If the jurisdictional battle continues, what role do you see the NDP playing in trying to resolve this, given that you are not currently in government?
The jurisdiction question comes up a lot, and I feel like this is probably a good opportunity to address it head on. I went to law school, like yourself, and studied constitutional law, and very familiar with the separations of power that are outlined in our Constitution. But when I go speak to a family, and they ask me, we need help to get our teeth fixed, we need help to find housing, we need help for anything, for our kids that are going to school. And I think about those people. If you have ever spoken to people who are struggling, and you think you could look someone in the eyes that's struggling and say, not my jurisdiction, and you think that that's a good response to a person who's struggling, I think you need to reevaluate if you're in the right role. Mm-hmm. Our job should be... our job should be to find solutions. I think a leader is not someone who tries to hide behind excuses, but someone who tries to find a solution, even if it's going to be difficult, even if it's going to be complicated. And so that's the way I look at everything. And often we've seen in the past couple of years, throughout the pandemic, people have said, oh, it's not the jurisdiction of the federal government, it's not the jurisdiction. And then it is something the federal government can do, and it gets done. And I really think that's what leaders should do, find ways to get things done. Of course, we respect the federal nature of our government. And I think it's a beautiful thing to give significant powers to provinces and territories, but it should not be an excuse not to act. And there's always ways to find solutions. And specifically on the dental care, I think it's a pretty elegant solution, actually. What we're proposing is basically a federal insurance plan for dental care that will pay the bills. We're not going to hire dentists. We're not hiring dental hygienists. We're not administering the program. We're going to pay the bills for people who can't afford dental care as a down payment towards a universal system, which will absolutely require provinces' collaboration. But right now, if a third of Canadians in a G7 nation, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, can't get their teeth fixed, we need to do something immediate. And the solution that we're providing, much like employment insurance, which is a federal program, is a federal program to get people help now. And that's why I'm so excited about it. It's not going to be a long distance kind of looking down the horizon for a long time before this happens. Kids under 12 will be able to get their teeth fixed by the end of this year. That's how concrete this is.
The audience came ready because the follow-up question is sharp. Follow-up question is, that's fair. I'm not kidding.
That's hilarious.
But unity is important to many of us. What do you say to those, to people who say that this could challenge us from a national unity perspective?
I would say, and I'm glad that there's that question. It really helps me too, because I missed a part I should have said in the first response. That I understand why premiers and provinces are prioritizing healthcare transfers, because we have to do that. And I'll be clear, I fought for that in this agreement. And again, it's not a New Democrat agreement. It's what we were able to achieve in the minority government. And we fundamentally need to look at how our healthcare system, in multiple ways, the first time maybe we could understand that something new happened and we were adjusting, but wave after wave, and folks, I'm sure you were following this, our healthcare system was pushed to the brink of collapse a number of times. And I spoke with healthcare workers, nurses who were in tears because they felt they weren't doing a good enough a job. And when they described the scenario, is because they were overworked, understaffed, under-resourced, not enough staff in general. And they were doing their best they can, but how is it possible that our system was pushed to the brink of collapse so many times? Each wave was another potential collapse. So fundamentally, our healthcare system is underfunded. And a part of that, unequivocally, is because the federal government has been cutting its share of investments. So we need to increase our transfers. I really believe in public health care. My family directly was impacted by that. I've shared the story that my dad was in a really tough spot dealing with basically a life-threatening addiction. And the only time he got better was when he was able to make the decision, I want to get better. And there was a spot available at a publicly funded rehab center. And we had no money at the time. My dad had declared bankruptcy, didn't have a house, things were really tough. And it saved his life, the fact that there was a publicly available program. And so I want to fight with everything I have to keep our system public and universal and well-funded. And so I understand why the premiers are focused on that. They're saying, well, right now our number one priority is we've got to keep this thing going. Our healthcare system is at a risk. And so I think, I know we're not going to give up the fight to increase transfers. And that's something that premiers are rightly so fighting for, even if I disagree with some of their political positions. That is something fundamentally that we all agree. So we'll keep on fighting for that. We couldn't get it in this agreement, but we'll keep on pushing for that. And I think recognizing the need for increased investments in healthcare is something that will bring us together and will unify folks around the fact that we want to keep it public. Canadians are proud of that, and we'll keep on fighting for that.
You mentioned Indigenous peoples in your remarks. I'm very sensitive and aware to so many of the rights that I have as a Canadian are credit to the labor movement in this country, that my ability to move from Scarborough to Brampton to Bay Street and have the career that I have is a credit to the labor movement. What do you say to Canadians who feel left behind by the current labor movement? Indigenous peoples, potentially women of color, in this changing dynamic? As one of our first political leaders who is a leader of color?
I feel like often what has been a kind of a strategic communications piece by the right is to use the question of fairness in the most negative of way. And so instead of saying it's unfair that all people don't have pensions, the right will say, why does a teacher have a pension? And say that we're spending too much money there. Instead of the same motivating spirit of fairness being used to say, because some folks have this great thing, why don't we make sure that everyone has this great thing? So I think with union, sure, yeah. And I feel with unions, that kind of the negative frame has been used against unions. I think one of the best ways for us to fight inequality, one of the best ways for us to lift up workers is to make it easier to unionize. And in that, we need to make sure that that we empower people, we empower unions to be able to organize more. And I notice a really strong initiative by many of the largest unions to be even more aware of being inclusive, encouraging women, encouraging racialized people and indigenous people. But I would say to the people who feel left behind, it's true. There are people that are being left behind, and they are angry and frustrated, and it's right to be so. And they're rightfully angry and frustrated, and that's why I incorporated that into my remarks, because it's something we've got to be honest about, and we've got to respond to, and then provide that hope with real solutions.
Thank you for that answer. The question from the audience references that 5 days ago, shots were fired to a group of Muslims in Scarborough. Last year, a Pakistani family in Canada was targeted by Islamophobia. There's been an increase in anti-Semitism, increase in anti-Black racism. How do you think the NDP can play a role in addressing the perceived hate in our society right now?
Really important question. It's not just perceived, though. It's absolutely real and concrete. And I've often referred to fire with this metaphor, which I think is important for us to reflect on. Hate is very much like a fire, and a fire that can't be contained. Once it's allowed to start, it spreads and it consumes everything. And the reason why we've given in the question, it gave all the examples. If it's okay to hate someone based on any criteria, your religion, your gender, your sexuality, it becomes okay to hate for more reasons, and it expands and it grows. And once hate is able to take hold, it will spread. And so we've got again, another collective responsibility in the sense of kinship in our universal family, that anytime we see any form of hate, we have to stamp it out, give it no space to breathe, no air to breathe, no space to take hold, and make sure that we are stamping it out. And some of the concrete things we can do, the examples of Islamophobia are horrific. People at the ultimate stage of hate, the potential and the reality is that it could mean a loss of life. People are killed for it. And in some of the biggest incidents and some of the most horrific, the Quebec mosque shooting and massacre, the London family that was mowed down by a vehicle, the Muslim man, a caretaker of a masjid in Toronto that was killed. In these three examples, what was found out was that the perpetrators were radicalized by online hate. And what the whistleblower from Facebook put out really clearly, which we'd already known, is that social media platforms prioritize and augment the presence of or the viewing of very divisive messages, hateful rhetoric is prioritized. So given that's something we've known and we've got proof that backs it up, we cannot let social media platforms govern themselves. This is where we have to take a very proactive role in targeting hate, making sure it's not available online, because it is clearly radicalizing some folks. So that's something really important. There are changes to legislation we can make around hate legislation. There are specifically targeting hate crimes and giving them the presence and the targeting them with the importance of how they has a societal impact. So that's something we need to focus on. There are a number of initiatives suggested by many groups, but I think we collectively, in addition to government action, need to just make sure we never allow it to take any space and to take up. It's real. Thankfully, the majority of Canadians don't feel that way, but there are certainly examples of how it's growing, and we've got to take it seriously. One last example I would say is that systemically at the government level, we've seen governments at the federal level, both Liberal and Conservative, who've targeted racialized community groups and targeted their organizations and charity with disproportionate scrutiny, even though the evidence is the real threats to people's safety and security are coming from the extreme right. And we need to make sure that our resources, our security resources are aligned with the real threats and not disproportionately scrutinizing racialized people or different community groups or religious groups. The same way policing constantly has a problem that we tried to fight back, things like carding that disproportionately impact racialized people and actually result in worse policing, but have horrible outcomes for the people that are targeted. So those are the things I think we need to focus on.
Good, and thank you for that. I'm going to end with some hot takes.
Okay.
What's your hot take tip for as a new dad?
Hot take. I wanted to do something funny, but I got something really sentimental that a really good friend of mine, we were chatting, And I said, you know, I feel this deep sense of responsibility for taking care of my kid. And he's like, I get it, you know, you got to be responsible. That's good. You're a good human. You want to be responsible, but don't think of it as responsibility. I'm like, okay, what should I think? He's like, think about it as a gift that you get to take care of this new life form. And it's like, we have this word called seva. It's like volunteer, like selfless service. You're being gifted with this beautiful moment to take care of an element of the universe. And I'm like, okay, that's a lot better than saying it's a responsibility.
That's a hot take.
So that's my hot take.
Hot
This is
take.
a very long-winded hot take. I'll try
Hot
to do the
take.
next one shorter.
Roti or naan bread?
Oh, roti all the way. It's healthier for you. Healthier for you, and I can make it myself, so.
Okay. Raptors or Leafs?
Oh, boy. You know Raptors for the culture they create, and like the vibes. Yeah. I was only hesitating because I thought the political implications of my answer. But I gotta be real.
I could go there. Habs or Leafs? Good answer.
That would be.
That would be no.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jagmeet Singh, leader of the federal MVP.
Thank you. That was awesome, man. Thank you.
You want to close the meeting? No, you good? We can switch jobs for the day. Okay. Mr. Speaker, I'm kidding. That was a House of Commons joke. Jagmeet, on behalf of the Canadian Club Toronto, thank you for sharing your passion for justice and fairness with us today. It's clear that you are demanding better and pushing for it in Ottawa. You've demonstrated it's not enough to make promises for Canadians that want results, and we thank you for your courage in moving the dialogue forward. We look forward to your continued leadership and your visit back to the club in the weeks and months ahead. Before we close, I want to thank again our sponsors for today, Bruce Power. Thank you very much for being here and for your support. And thank you to Simon and Bell as well for helping us host Ryerson Leadership Lab. We hope you'll join us. And to Ryerson Leadership Lab students, I want to tell you that 2 people at the head table today were once student leaders demanding better tuition, demanding better policies, demanding environment action, and now they run the Brabant Institute and are chair of this club. So you are leaders now and forever. On May 3rd, we will host Catherine Tate, President and CEO of the CBC, on World Press Freedom Day for a conversation about media freedom in the time of disinformation. We hope you can join us either online or in person. Let me conclude by thanking our staff for the club, Van Valkenburg Communications, and livemeetings.ca for making it possible for us to get together today. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks very much.